Well, I just listened to Douglas make a recording about this Lawfare situation that we're faced with. It was a 39-minute audio, and I just felt that there was a more succinct way we could bottom line this for everybody. And so, Douglas, let's give this another whirl. I'll still post your video. What I hear you saying is that President Trump has structured national security and the military in such a way, as you just told me, that he doesn't have to listen to any of them. He's also looking like he's listening to everybody, but in the end, he's done his own research and he's making his decisions based upon his research and not what these other people are telling him. Now, is that what I'm getting?
Yes, that's exactly right. Having been a principal a long time, what I do is I sit and I listen to both sides, and I make sure that both sides are there, and I make sure that both sides know that I don't care what they say to each other. They can punch each other. I'm listening to both sides. That's what he does. Now, when he created the first or the second executive order, it was to give him 100% power, not the 17 intelligence agencies, not the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not his staff, not the politics, not the Hill, none of it. And certainly not any fake intelligence. That's why he created a citizens intelligence group, and he defanged and declawed the National Security Council and created the Principals Committee as the show group for his intelligence.
Oh, you're doing it again. I don't want to get in the weeds. I just want to give people a real clear path of what's going on here. And so right now you have recommended that he go after the prosecutors and these attorneys because they're all paid for by the government. You know, they may have been appointed by Congress, but he can yank all of them, and they're doing great harm in this lawfare coup against the president. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Now, we have two people here we're identifying as key traitors in this judicial coup. It's Mary McCord and her husband, Sheldon Snook. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's who we got to go after. We've got to remove them from the playing field, and once we do, then Judge Roberts can't rely on Sheldon Snook to book his calendar just the way the enemy wants. And Mary McCord, Douglas has got many minutes of the recording that I'll place on after this. It'll explain what she did. But you're requesting and suggesting that these two players be removed from the field immediately in every legal and constitutional way.
Yes. And what your first question was, how did Trump restructure it so that he'd have the power? None of these people have any power. The National Security Council can meet. The cabinet can meet. Doesn't mean nothing to Trump. They don't go and they'll meet a group that's the opposite. He wants his enemies in the room. He wants them arguing. He wants them to get angry and then reveal the truth, because that never happens in government. The truth is never spoken. Last thing ever spoken is truth in the White House. So how do I know this? Because after the Hegseth, well, they're blaming it on him because he took the fall for it. It wasn't his fault, and it wasn't his meeting, and it wasn't a meeting because it wasn't duly constituted as a meeting, and even if it was a forum. So what they did on Signal was not national security. That's stupid. We knew more than that conversation knew. So how do we know this? Because after it hit the news, Trump was asked by the press, what do you have to say about this? He goes, I don't know. What are you talking about? And then they explained it to him. He goes, what? Who was this? He honestly did not know what they were talking about because it was that incidental. Oh, but leave it to the Democratic mainstream media, demon rat mainstream media. What will happen? Leave it to the Democrat mainstream media. What will happen? It will turn into a big explosion that tries to question his integrity, which is complete nonsense. He ignored it.
Now, folks, you can listen to the 40 minutes.
Well, just as we told you a few days ago, we're going to set up the White House and make sure they're listening to us by telling them to do a very, very, very specific thing and to see if they do it immediately. And they did. Literally, the next day, March 22nd, presidential memorandum preventing abuses of the legal system in the federal court. Now, this is an add-on to the fact that there is already an open statement by the president that lawfare, in other words, using lawyers and using the Justice Department for injustice, for fraud, criminality, he's openly stated that's happened. He's already fired a whole bunch of administrative law judges because you don't need them. They're just there to serve corporations and vested interests. And then he went after a number of lawyers that he had pointed out these lawyers had attacked him. And these lawyers got canned, and they were in a variety of different agencies. They're federal agencies, but in different places. Also federal prosecutors in different places, like the Southern District of New York, and so on and so forth. Now the battle looks as if it's between James Boasberg, a D.C. Circuit Court judge who was the judge who oversaw the attempted coup of Trump. And so I'm afraid he's in some very, very difficult waters. He has recently demanded that the Attorney General, what do you call her, a bimbo Bondi?
Whatever.
Call it whatever. Well, it's really cute that now Mary McLeod has come out to attack her, saying she needs to recuse herself. The Attorney General needs to recuse herself for defending the president. And then she gives no reasons why. Well, we're going to talk about her in a second, but this is exactly what this is about. We said, Mr. President, you own every federal prosecutor in every federal circuit and appellate court. Fire them all.
You said the name Mary McLeod. I'm not familiar with that.
Mary Cloud? Or what is it?
Well, are you talking about Mary McCord?
McCord.
Okay, well, I'm here just to make sure you don't misspeak. Okay, so we're talking about McCord. You know, he looks like a man. If you ever, first ugly as John Roberts' wife, Jane Sullivan, and then this thing, Mary McCord, who is married to, or whatever that arrangement is, with this Snook guy who is the assistant to John Roberts. My God, the bed couldn't get any slimier.
Okay, since you want to jump there, let's talk about her for a second. And yes, it's McCord. MC, capital C-O-R-D, not McLeod, which is what Trump is. He's a McLeod. He's like Connor McLeod. He's the Highlander, right? And this is McCord. This is his rival across the Brandybuck. Okay, now here we go. Mary McLeod. I love this article that has popped around. I don't know who wrote it. But I was thinking about this when I saw her being questioned in this, where was that? The Senate, I guess the Senate is looking into this Hegseth supposed national security breach because they were all talking on Signal about bombing the Houthis in Yemen a couple days ahead of time, and there was Goldberg from The Atlantic, this terrible, terrible, terrible journalist, in a rag that everybody knows is a complete garbage rag, somehow says he was invited into this Signal conversation between members of, and now this is what gets really interesting, and nobody else is going to talk about this that I've seen, but these are members of Trump's National Security Council. No, they're members of the President's Principals Committee. Well, guess what? Nothing the people in it clearly expresses it. His second memorandum, his second executive order, was to straighten out the National Security Council, take away all their power. And you heard it, if that conversation was true, even if it was, nothing was secure. Nothing had anything to do with anything that was being revealed that was of any security nature, even though Signal says that they're completely encrypted from end to end, and that the crypto keys are dissolved as soon as... No, that's all a lie. We know that's a lie because Michael McKibben's MySkiff is the only thing that does that in the world right now. So we've been telling them, if you would get onto MySkiff, you silly billies, you wouldn't have these problems, but that's not the point. This journalist said he was invited in and given the number. Now, oh, hello, how is it that there would be all these people, top level, in on a texting conversation? Can the national security agent, the head advisor, the NSA, the national security advisor, who is, what's his name, Waltz, he can invite anyone he wants. Those are open conversations. That is it calls it right in the creation of it. It calls it an open forum. There's nothing secure involved in this. But then what do? They pull out their big guns, take it to a big staged congressional hearing, as if that ever leads to anything except a J6, which we're now finding out is just the lawyers involved in that. We already saw that Trump fired most of the people involved in it. He's going after the people involved in it. He's going after all the people who set him up in lawyer situations.
Let's get back to the attorneys.
But now Mary McCord is always pulled out because she's the number one heat-seeking missile going after Trump since before his first election. She submitted the fraudulent FISA application to spy on the Trump campaign. Yep. Don't forget, she's the one who set up General Flynn before Trump even got in, lied about it, got caught lying about it, didn't matter. They moved her on as a detailee from one unit to another. She was part of practically there were 13 names for Crossfire Hurricane. I think she was involved in all of those levels, if I'm not mistaken, as I remember it. Okay, she also created the Logan Act claim used against Michael Flynn, as I just said, and then went with Sally Yates to confront the White House. In other words, a setup to a very naive, not very intelligent guy who now has been given a very minor post which just makes me crack up. Anyway, then she left the DOJ and went to work for Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler. Now, after I say their name, excuse me, I have to spit and clean my mouth out with mouthwash, because those two are the two of the lowest, slimiest critters, non-human critters that I've ever seen elected. It's just hard to believe that somehow Adam Schiff got elected to the senator. He was selected.
Okay,
and Jerry Nadler.
Let's go back to the executive order.
I will, but this is the number one lawyer. This is the next thing I'm going to tell him to do. Take away her clearance instantaneously and start the indictment against her and Boasberg and Mary McCord's husband, as you mentioned, Sheldon Snook, who is the number one person that controls what I call the lottery of who gets into the Supreme Court consideration. He's the number one guy in the whole of America controls John Roberts by telling him what he can look at as possibilities of the 100% of cases coming to the Supreme Court. They see about 1%, and Snooky determines which they are. Now, let's remember, John Roberts' wife is already compromised with USAID.
And SES.
And SES and everything. And then arguing with Trump in a public domain. This is unbelievable. They would impeach a judge for that in the past. A judge can't give out their personal opinion when they know a case is coming to them. That's it. Throw them out. And these people have to go far beyond recusing themselves. They need to impeach themselves. But we have to go on here because it gets even better. She organized the CIA rule changes with the intelligence community, Inspector General Michael Atkinson, that allowed the whistleblower to be anonymous. These are all the key factors. This is the point of leverage of lawfare against Trump for the last 8 years. And don't forget that in this new memorandum, he states that they're going back after every lawyer who commits all these crimes, which are going to list in a big long list here in a minute, over the last 8 years. This isn't about what's happening now. This is about disbarring them. This is about putting sanctions. When have you heard about sanctions being put on a federal prosecutor? You probably never have, because it's so seldom. Can you impeach John Roberts? Yes, you can. It has happened in the past. This is more than enough evidence to impeach a variety of people on the Supreme Court. Okay, so in other words, she doctored the evidence. She doctored the FISA court evidence. Remember that? Even when the IG, Michael Horowitz, was there. Anybody remember any of this? She was always there. Her nasty, ugly, male-looking, horrible face, monstrous being. This creature should be right next to Peter Strzok, sitting next to each other in hell, because that's where they're going to both end up. So they might as well get used to it. Remember, she volunteered and joined the J6 committee. She ran the whole thing. She ran the whole lawfare of J6, supposedly put people in jail and used the Insurrection Act against Trump, though only a president can use the Insurrection Act. So that's how powerful she is, folks. We're dealing with the number one horrible person. If they don't get her and John Podesta, they should tar and feather them and ride them out on a rail, because their crimes should lead them straight to jail. And if someone can't prosecute them, Miss Bondi or Mrs. or whatever you are inept. Okay, who did she work with in Georgia? Oh, that's right. Who set up the whole thing that is now completely withered and no longer exists with Fannie Willis? Mary McCord. Oh, my gosh. Wait a second. Who's the director for Jack Smith and the special counsel to prosecute Trump? Oh, that's right. Mary McCord. Wait a second. So then, is there anyone? It looks like Boosberg. Boosberg knows he's going down because he's 100% guilty. Anyone who's watched any news knows that, because the FISA court still goes on. They're still spying on Trump. They're still trying to take him down. The coup is still active 8 years later, and she is still the head of the coup. She directed Mueller. She directed Jack Smith, brought him in from another country, for God's sake. Any Star Chamber - grand jury, she is behind. Now, why? Because she controls the Supreme Court. She doesn't care what the lower courts say. And she controls these idiots because why? Well, because she's got the dirt on everyone, doesn't she? Doesn't she have a nice file on James Boasberg she could turn in that would put him in jail for the rest of his life? Of course she does. This is one of the top agents. It's like a Bruce Orr. What happened with Bruce and Nellie? Nothing. What happened with Andrew McCabe? Nothing. James Comey? Nothing. Anyone who was ever given immunity in the Mueller trial? Nothing. But Trump does have the power to fire or not use lawyers. So in this beautiful presidential memorandum, he goes after law firms. Perkins Coie, he went after Paul Weiss and his law firm, got Paul to turn on a dime and do $40 million worth of pro bono work for him. And he knows Paul knows all the dirt on the inside. That's why Trump uses dirty lawyers. How will you know what they're going to do unless you're talking with one of their pirates, one of the thieves? You know, there's honor among thieves. They always recognize each other's ripoffs and get out of their way because, you know, they don't want to get stabbed in the eye. So these are law firms, and now he's gone after a number of law firms, and now he can go after any law firm he wants. And they actually set up provisions to say they're going to come in to demand, and I love this, and I doubt no one else is going to say this, but I'm going to go on ahead and say it. For the last 8 years, these law firms can now have Doge go in and look at their finances, because that's what it says almost in the very last paragraph. So they can go in and find out about the money for Perkins Coie, who was it paid by the DNC, but specifically out of Hillary Clinton's fund. Not even the money she stole from Bernie and all the rest of them. All that. They can get all that now because these people can be considered criminals and fraud, because this is, as he says here, and I'll read it in a second. Who's targeted? That's what we're working on. Is Mary targeted? Heck yes. She should be the number one target. Is Andrew Weissman number two target? Yes. He was in the Mueller investigation. He's the one who drove it publicly. Was Paul Weiss? Yes. He was in the passenger seat. So Paul's turned. So what do you always do, in my opinion? You go in and you get someone to turn state's evidence so they don't get prosecuted, and make sure they're the worst of the worst so that they can turn in everybody because they were there. I can barely get beyond point 3. I'm using their exact words just so that you'll know. Let me, first off, review conduct by attorneys or their law firms in litigation against the federal government over the last 8 years. That's all 16 of the court cases right now from lowercase federal circuit court judges that are against Trump come under that. And now, what proves their fraud? That would be the third point here. In cases that implicate national security, homeland security, public safety, or election integrity. Election integrity, almost all these circuit court judges passed what were certainly fraudulent law, or gave credence to what were certainly fraudulent laws in all the states, for the exceptions of COVID. And so the entire election right here, it says right here, election integrity. Well, there was none in 2020. How about national security? National security trumps all. Note what Bondi just did. I laughed at them and I said, okay, Bondi, all you have to say is go jump in a lake, James Boasberg. You have no authority here, and quote the Constitution and the powers of the executive branch, and then let him just stew in his own juices and fire the prosecutors in that court that Trump has power over, which is all of them that are paid by the federal government. Now, let me point this out. As far as I know, almost all 16 cases, everyone I could find, was brought by the ACLU, the most corrupt law firm in the world. And it's not a firm. It's a do-gooder organization which is completely corrupt. And it controls what is considered to be politically correct, I guess I'd call that. So anyway, these cases are fake cases, and down here, frivolous cases are in this. You bring a frivolous case against the federal government, you will be subject to sanctions, disbarment. You will be subject to all kinds of stuff, and you will certainly be part of an investigation, and that investigation will include basically what it says here, everything, all monies. So if that judge just happened to have a wife who's on the NGO for a case that they didn't recuse themselves from, bingo, bango, gone. You don't have to do anything. They're just gone. You fire them for that. You fire Mary because she worked most of the time for the Department of Defense. She also worked for Mueller. She worked for the Democrats in the House. She worked for every evil thing you can think of. She supported the CIA. Every evil thing. The FBI, she was one of the top people at the FBI. She was like third in command. I think when Andrew McCabe was in charge, wasn't she the lawyer in charge of all of this stuff that was being investigated? Andrew McCabe, Crossfire Hurricane, all of it, the FISA court, all of it, the Horowitz investigation? Yes, she was. Couldn't get any more criminal. Okay, so if you say Homeland Security and then you say sanctuary cities, you say arrest any law enforcement person, it says right in here, anyone who is committing unlawful acts willingly, and anyone who is saying there's such a thing as a sanctuary city, and then acts on that, allows them to run around, get out of jail free card. No, that's all illegal. Oh, look at that. The rule of law is coming back. What are we going to do? They don't know how to act. So they all scream and yell, and demon rats, the reason they're demons, you know it, is because they yell and get violent faster than anybody you know. Public safety, anything on the border. Okay? Anything on the border, south, north, anything with the criminals coming across the border, anything with fentanyl coming across the border, and particularly we just got to see what Biden, when the border was so filled with so many people coming across, he had no place to put them. He invited people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, essentially about 750,000 of them. He gave them a free ride on anybody. They didn't vet none of them. Anybody who got on the airplane came in if they said they had a relative in America. That's all they had to have, and then they got the card, they got the $10,000, they got the free ride, they got the bus trip to wherever they wanted to go, and we don't know what happened to any of them. Okay? That was, 750,000 people. That was called the payroll pipeline. That's what this means. Public safety, homeland security, national security. So in any cases that implicate these issues, all the lawyers involved and their firms, and if they work for the president, that means they work for him. He is the firm. They will be fired and they will be investigated. Now, what actions will be taken against if they bring frivolous cases? How many of these cases are not frivolous? Look at Jack Smith. They all dissolve. Look at Fannie Wilson. Look, they all dissolve, right? They just dissolve. And now they're going back and looking at the Stormy case, and they're going to dissolve that one too. Why? Because they were all fake. Were they unreasonable? Yeah. So if you do any of this, you're in big trouble. Frivolous, unreasonable, and vexatious litigation against the United States or in matters before executive departments and agencies of the United States. So if you try to get to Trump through going after the EPA or anybody else, forget it. They all work for him. It's one guy. Go after him. No, you can't. It's illegal. It's frivolous. It's unreasonable. And it's vexatious. And also you'll go after them if they engage in actions that violate the laws of the United States or rules governing attorney conduct. Ha! Attorney conduct? All they have to find is one payment. Hello? And because he said this, and did I not harp on this before? Because he said this, he can go after all offshore accounts because the attorneys could be being paid. All they have to, you know how they don't let you move very large amounts of money at the bank because they say it could be for terrorists? Oh, well, this is just like terrorists. These are lawfare terrorists. So we can look at anything that they try to ship out of the country in terms of money they didn't pay taxes on. Or where did it come from? They'll have to answer those questions. Unethical misconduct that threatens our national security. Every time you threaten a sitting president with Crossfire hurricane, which was for 4 solid years, all those people are guilty if they are in any way a lawyer or in any law firm. And that would include law assistants. Sorry, Sheldon Snooks, who is the assistant to John Roberts, who determines the 1% lottery. Oh, it's not a lottery. It's his determination.
And here's the thing. We, the people out here, support these bold, brave actions.
And then they repeat again, national security, homeland security, public safety, or election integrity. Okay, how many people didn't get caught with that in the 2020 election? We had, 60,000 pieces of evidence sent in showing election fraud? All ignored. Rampant fraud. Well, the 60,000 were sent to Mike Pence, and he still didn't claim that he didn't let the other electors come in, which would have negated and called the election fraud. Okay, Mike Pence, you're part of this too. Immigration system fraud. Hello, come on. Here, maybe even says it here. He literally talks about the lawyers who they give a phone to anyone south of the border. And it used to be, the new thing is Chinese. Chinese pregnant women would all come over on boats. And they'd send them up to the border. And then they would have telephone booths out in the middle of the desert in Chinese. And then the women would come here, have the baby, have an anchor baby, and then they can bring the whole family over. That's all fraud. That's immigration system fraud, right? Well, it was rampant and it was institutionalized before. So now this is the one I love. Supplanted the constitutional lawful basis upon which the president exercises core powers under Article 2 of the United States Constitution. Those powers have been questioned. There's no doubt constitutionally and in terms of the response of all levels of government in terms of the lawful basis of the president's power. Look at what Obama did. It's now being said that Obama, they have the records now, they came out, that Obama represented Hillary to all the law enforcement agencies and says you can't prosecute her, no matter how much top secret information was on her server that went to China and Russia and everybody else, and no matter how much he did pay for play, Secretary of State, $86 billion just from there alone, you can't prosecute her. So they have him. Will anything happen? Well, I don't know. But that's what Obama did with the executive privilege, and look what Biden did with it recently. Law after... He didn't stop, did he? The payroll pipeline, perfectly exact example. He brought those people. Nothing was going to stop him. He used our money. And for all we know, they were human trafficked afterwards. It's all a waste. And he did nothing about anything real the entire time he was in. He was just like Obama. He was here to erode our constitutional republic, and by golly, creating 38 million refugees. Obama did a good job of it. Now I can go down the whole list, but I want to get back to Hegseth and that whole debacle, because you see how the demon rats yell and scream over an insignificant thing like a call between Trump and Zelensky, the most criminal person on the face of the earth at this moment. And yet, look at this. I'll tell you what's happening with the Principals Committee in just a minute. I'll reiterate because no one else is talking about it. Unscrupulous behavior by lawyers and law firms. Oh, yeah, thousands of those. Circumvent immigration policies. That includes sheriffs, that includes law enforcement, that includes anybody at the border that helped a felon come into this country. I don't care how cute they are. They're felons. There's different ways to do it. Unethical conduct in federal courts. Do you get that one? Unethical conduct in federal courts. They just named what was unethical. Frivolous lawsuits are unethical. Everything that's been going on, that's all unethical. So therefore, they can go after them and sanction them for each one of these points on a single case. What are those sanctions? No one knows. That's the beauty of the president. He can sanction anybody. He just re-sanctioned Canada. He just re-sanctioned Russia. He just re-sanctioned all kinds of people and put new tariffs and tariffs on tariffs, a special tariff called a tariff. Okay, presented legal filings for improper purposes, including to harass, cause unnecessary delay, or endlessly increase the cost of litigation. He's going to get back every dime and more that they made him have to spend to defend himself with these frivolous cases. Making legal arguments that are unwarranted by existing law and or frivolous arguments. Do you realize that in this case, that's perfectly legal with lawyers. They are liars. Those are paid liars, okay? But now you do that in a federal court. Woo, too bad. Violating the rule of law. Okay, well, that covers almost everything in D.C. Lack of a basis in law. Well, if there is a lack of basis, don't worry, they'll create a new law. If they can, right? Baseless partisan attacks. Hello? 8 solid years. Now it's going into the 9th year, okay? Now, going back to Hegseth, he doesn't call that meeting. Let me explain. When Trump came in, his second act was to restructure the National Security Council, eliminate the chief of the head of all of the military. So there's no military men now that are called in. No warmongers are called in to a cabinet meeting or a national security council. It used to be only warmongers were called in, all right? They're not called in. Homeland Security isn't called in. Why? Because that became the new SS. If you don't change the laws, it's still the new president, the president's new SS. It has the authority that Hitler's SS had, and it's in control of all other agencies. Don't forget that. Homeland Security Agency, in charge of all other agencies, including elections, everything. FBI, CIA, all. CIA, supposedly not, but we don't want to go there. Okay, the head of Homeland Security isn't even invited to the Principals Committee or to the National Security Council, and neither is the Joint Chiefs of Staff head of all of the military. They're not even invited. Not only that, if they want to bring something up, they have to put it on a list. He has to approve it, or it can't be discussed during a National Security Council meeting.
Who is this inner circle?
What? Just a second. Well, remember, he should have put you on the one that was the Citizens Intelligence Committee. But that's the point. He allows other opinions than just, the standard opinion. And so he allows what's called, and he took all the power away from the Principals Committee. It's been in existence since his previous administration, but it wasn't utilized. Now it's been defanged, declawed, and so has the National Security Council. Nobody can do anything. So it does not matter what they were discussing on that text message on Signal, who it was with or whatever. It wasn't put on the agenda. Didn't you hear them say it? I love it that Gilbert is smart enough to pick out these subtleties because he's a big fat liar. He said he had one of the members of the National Security Council say, well, Trump requires 24 hours before anything that we suggest can be considered by him, right? Well, that's the truth. Trump has a clause, but you can read that right out of the executive order. They can say and do whatever the heck they want. He makes the decisions. None of them can make a decision. And that's what was also said in the text messages. None of us can make the decision. That's what all the commentary is about. That it's a horrible national security. It wasn't the national security conversation. There was nothing was labeled. Nothing was stamped secure, secret, confidential, nothing. Top secret. No, absolutely not. The president's principals committee is nothing. It says right in it. It is a forum for discussion. Period. Sorry if I spit on you. Period. It is nothing. And the National Security Council, I'm sorry to have to tell you, is nothing. If he goes into the ready room, he calls the Joint Chiefs of Staff and gets their military asses over there. He tells them what to do. Always before, they had the biggest voice in that room. That was the National Security Council. I worked for them, the National Security Agency. And now, nope. None of those people can make any decisions. So that they were talking about it 24 hours before they dropped the bomb. Gilbert didn't point out the fact that in the text it says Trump needs 24 hours to think about anything we say here in our conversation. Now, in the text it says, and I don't know this to be true, but Waltz himself, now this is what's really crazy. Waltz can invite anyone he wants in to that meeting.
Oh, okay. So he invited the reporter
And
in.
the reporter says he was invited.
Okay.
And Hegseth says he was invited, and Hegseth's taken the fall for Waltz. Only Waltz can invite in a reporter. The reporter says he came in under accepted circumstances. They knew he was there. No, none of the other members knew he was there. And so how is it that his name didn't come up on who's in that chat room? But anyway, and he's a big fat liar who came up with all kinds of lies against Trump, this Gilbert from Atlantic. So what they're trying to do is what they did with Flynn, trying to make his staff look as if they're inept. And by doing so, he's inept. They did that with Flynn. I tell you, again, Flynn was a setup. They went after the biggest idiot and set him up. Mary McCord set up Flynn. And who was in on it? Mike Pence. And the DOJ. This was part of Crossfire Hurricane. When they saw Trump was going to win, they changed its name. It went through, 12, 13 different names. But anyway, the point is that these are the people he's going after. Okay? So that's what the Hegseth call is about. They would do that with anything they can. All right? Now, who was the idiot that allowed this person in? I don't believe they did. But because the people who were in the meeting saw that the text message was true, one of them admitted it was true, and an assistant of Hegseth said that Hegseth knew that he was invited in, which is all a bunch of nonsense. And remember, Hillary Clinton has the Federal Bridge Key, Federal Bridge Authority, public key infrastructure, crypto codes. She can get into anybody's message. If you think for 1 second that Signal is secure, you haven't done your homework. There's only one secure system out there, and he is the top cryptologist who is part of it. And to say that there is a military or even the presidential White House, no. First off, all those can be intercepted by stingrays. So they knew when they were on the text message on Signal that literally they've done this in D.C. Every few feet, the amplification of the stingrays in the area cross over each other, and it is like a zone of digital spying. This has always been true. Haven't you followed the news? That was in the Senate. It was in the House. We've caught these people over and over. Last time it was the guy from Pakistan. I don't even want to go into it. Becerra's, if you want to know about it, look up Becerra's server. That's the second server Trump was talking about. He went back to Pakistan and became a really big public figure there because his dad was. Oh. And his dad was one of the top intelligence people there. He came and had
he had name. They may not have heard me say
Imwan Awan.
Yeah. Well, We've been following, all of us cats, we've been following this for a long time. So they're not going to be able to get out of their crimes. And we're going to hang on long enough that either they die of old age or they go to federal prison, every single one of them. And while that's going on over here on the left side of the clown circles, over here on the right side, and not left, right with political persuasion, just on the other side of the circus, there are some of us trying to kickstart the new way we're going to be living in the world.
So it has to go to Trump because Trump only listens to Trump. Yes, Stephen Miller's a genius. He's great with words. He's the best wordsmith out there, and he knows political history better than anybody. So I'm going to suggest this to you, Mr. President. Right here it says, in your new memorandum, I further direct the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security. Well, now that's interesting. To prioritize enforcement of their respective regulations governing attorney conduct and discipline. Well, when he says Homeland Security, that's a catch-all for everything. And so, yeah, I guess that's what it really means. He's just saying, Pam, you, and Homeland Security, which is all federal government agencies controlled by one SS boss, you must go after these lawyers now and put the sanctions on them, put disciplinary actions on them, get rid of their any business they have with the federal government. This goes back for 8 years. Take away their security clearances and do everything you possibly can to discipline these lawyer firms. And in it, it says that he has the right to go in and to audit these lawyer firms that have brought these cases against the federal government. That allows DOJ to go in. If DOJ goes in, it'll be just like when they went in with Perkins Coie, and Perkins Coie deferred and wouldn't let them and went to court. And, I went way up the courts. And then they went to Fusion GPS, and Fusion GPS wouldn't let them in to look at their books. But I told everyone, if you can see the payments from Fusion GPS's books, you will see all the criminals involved in Crossfire Hurricane, because Fusion GPS is like the Podesta brothers. They're the Democratic political arm. They're the muscle. They're the killers. They're the cleanup men. They are the most horrible people on the face of the earth. And Podesta has placed probably over 10,000 people in D.C. personally. Have you ever even heard that he went back into the Biden administration and ran it? Did you even hear his name? I did. And yes, he was very active, but behind the scenes. Well, he was, of course, the criminal behind the DNC. So all of these things that are related to here with election corruption, that's John Podesta. They put Manafort in jail for what he did in Ukraine. Well, the Podesta brothers did the same thing. Stone, Manafort, and Black were the Republican version of that. So now Trump is basically going after the criminal law firms. And, of course, the ACLU now will have the tables turned on them because they brought these frivolous lawsuits to these courts. So for the first time that I will know of, they will be under the same gun they try to put everyone else under. So this is absolutely genius. But literally, if you are really, truly listening to us, I would like to see in the next 3 days Mary McCord bounced out on her butt along with her husband, Sheldon Snook, and John Roberts giving you an apology.